let's always drink the good stuff.
It's about food, art, travel, music, culture, lifestyle. It's interesting conversations with interesting people. And yes, sometimes it's even about drinking the good stuff. Welcome back to Always Drink the Good Stuff. Today I'm sitting down with an independent winemaker who's doing things differently. Small production, bold ideas, and a passion for crafting truly unique wines. We'll talk about what drew him into winemaking, the grapes he loves, the places that inspire him, and his thoughts on bringing Armenian varietals to life in California. Welcome to the podcast, Greg Nemet, or I should say, Kareen Nemet.
Oh, thank you.
Tell us about yourself, please. Where does the name Nemet come from?
That's a great question. So the Nemet last name is actually Hungarian. So Greek, I'm an Armenian winemaker, but Hungary is also a very big winemaking entity.
Correct.
It's a culture of wine, and I'm not only Armenian. I'm also an Armenian from Georgia, raised there. So the wine intertwines in my I guess DNA on both sides. So Greek or Armenian, predominantly Armenian. My father is half Hungarian, half Armenian, but the last name is Hungarian.
And so it's not Nemetian.
No, it's not Nemetian. Yeah, it's simply Nemet. It's actually should be TH, but in the immigration and transition, transcription from Armenian to Russian to English, just the TH kind of got cut down. So if you go to Budapest today, there's a lot of Nemet is as popular as Smith.
Really?
So,
okay.
Yeah, it's very popular.
That's interesting. Okay, good to know. And so you grew up in Georgia?
I grew up, born in Moscow, but just born because my father was doing a PhD in Moscow State University, was born in Moscow, and then immediately, but grew up in Tiflis. So Tiflis, as we Armenians call it, is a very Armenian city at the time, still is, but less so. So first 10 years of my life, formative, the childhood was in Tiflis. Went to the last Armenian school there. So and when we talk about Armenian school, it's not privately funded. This is a state-funded Armenian school. So part of the, let's say, imagine LA Unified School District had an Armenian school. So like that. So that's where I grew up.
I was in Armenia last September, and I had a chance to visit Tiflis for a few days. So a friend of mine, we drove from Yerevan to Tiflis.
Yeah.
It was a 5-hour drive, and a beautiful city. I'd never been there before. It reminded me of Madrid. We had big white buildings, regal buildings, beautifully set up. It was really I'm glad I had a chance to visit there. Beautiful city.
It's an amazing city, very important to the Armenian historical kind of story. So when the people say when we talk about Yerevan, that's a ancient city. We talk about that, right? But predominantly modern cities. So when we talk about Yerevan, this is the city of our present. But if anyone says tell me what is Armenian in its DNA. From the 19th century, 17th century, in those time frames, Sayat Nova times, right? It would be predominantly you would have to point to either Tiflis or Shushi. I only know the story of Shushi. Now is a little bit on the tragic side, or maybe Istanbul, kind of that's where the thriving Armenian 19th century. Yerevan is a modern city in all its taking. It's a 20th century city. So being Tiflis Armenian, kind of you were part of that ethos of that old school Armenian. Eastern Armenian.
And there's always infighting going on between Armenians and Georgians trying to claim who started making wine first. And if you go to international wine fairs or expos, we Armenians say making wine at least for 60 to 100 years.
Yeah.
And the Georgians say we've been making for at least 8,000 years.
Yeah.
And so you having the both DNAs of Georgian and Armenians, you were predestined to be in the wine business, right?
I had to be. Yeah, absolutely. It's a good little tidbit. I like that we're talking about this as a community, and both as Georgians and Armenians. So growing up in Georgia, yes, there is a little bit of a contention between Georgians and Armenians, and I'll kind of explain it in the most kind of PC way. A lot of things Armenians did give to Georgians, and Georgians are just fighting us on that concept. Now, I don't have to walk around the world being like, hey, Georgian, everything you know is because of me. No, that's not the point. But the point is, what are the facts and what is correct? Georgia is a juggernaut compared to Armenia in the winemaking world. Right now, I'm a winemaker in Northern California, right? I network with the kids out there, like the cool kids, the new, like Georgia is very, very in vogue, and Georgia has a history of winemaking and a longer continuity of winemaking. Armenia has a lot of interruption, but we have that original DNA, and you cannot, the Areni cave is far more advanced than anything that they have geologically found in Georgia. That's the way I argue it. I don't
No,
say
no, I think you're making a great point.
Yeah.
Given at least one of the interruptions was during the Soviet era,
Yes.
where the Soviet delegated winemaking
Absolutely.
to Georgians and let Armenians make the brandy.
Yeah.
And there was this interruption there.
Absolutely. So that, as well as if we look historically, I have a little bit of a history buff love affair in me. So Georgians weren't as much under the Ottoman rule as Armenians as well. So for the longest, outside of the time of the Giliki and Armenia, right, which there was like 800 years of us having no state whatsoever,
Right.
we were relegated pretty much to making wine as a church entity. That was it. Everybody else in the villages made wine, but it wasn't as institutionalized as Georgia, that was outside of that yoke, had the ability. You know what I mean? Like, so that's actually why Tiflis is so Armenian. There's a lot of Armenians kind of split off and went into a slightly freer, unoccupied lands, which was the Kingdom of Georgia, but it wasn't. Yeah, Georgia was also invaded, blah blah blah, but not as deeply entrenched in the Ottoman side of things as Armenia was for the longest time. And then, yes, a little breath of fresh air, the independence of Armenia, and then immediately 70 years of centralized communism. Yes, they said, you guys make brandy and Georgians will supply Soviet Union with wine. So not the best wine, but it was still like, the artisans were able to continue. So
Continue the skill level.
yeah,
Advancing the skill
absolutely.
level.
Yeah, whereas Armenians kind of went almost underground. You know what I mean? Like where only in little family stories would you continue making wine. And now we have this beautiful renaissance, which I would like to add to from the diasporan side of things.
No, absolutely. I was joking, of course, earlier when I said you were predestined to be in the wine business, but you are in the wine business.
Yes.
So how did you get into the wine business?
Good question. So I started my journey. So I grew up in Tiflis. Wine was all around. So that was obviously, in the DNA. Everything from parties. It wasn't vodka like we know. It wasn't, cognac as we know Armenian. But in my side of the world, it was, men, women, men mostly drank wine. Then migrated to New York. This was my entry point into America. I didn't immigrate to LA. I'm not from the LA diaspora. I just kind of grew up as a teenager in New York City. We then actually migrated back. My father had a contract back to former Soviet Union, 2 years in Moscow again. So he was a consultant for the now established American enterprises there. And then we immigrated to California, where kind of, like oh my God, what is this? You know what I mean? Like, so we came into California August 99. I came to college in LA, further out actually in UC Riverside. My formative years as a professional were in photography, right? But the bug of being around California and everything that's happening in California, and this is actually a part of my ignorance, I was like, okay, and I'm very big patriot of the diaspora, of the Armenian story as well. I go to Fresno and there's the raisin. And I was like, wow, Armenians came here and we did a lot for the agrarian side of things. But, when I started digging into the winemaking, I'm still searching actually. We didn't essentially come in doing wine. We came in and we brought agriculture, raisins. But I'm in Northern California, and I'm a Georgian Armenian, and I'm an Armenian, right? I see what's going on in Armenia, and I love Napa Valley, and I love hospitality, us as Armenians, so that's the entry point. So I pitched it to my family. I was like, hey, guys, I'm going to continue. I still do photography, everything that I've been doing. I'm very community-oriented, so I did a lot of organizing with a lot of Armenian nonprofits. We're going to keep going with this. But I want to take a little dabble into what this world of wine is. What do you think? And they're like, oh, it's a great idea. So I started to simultaneously work in tasting rooms initially, and then started to make wine in the true American style in the garage. Like
Garagista.
this is
A garagista.
garagista. You know what I mean? Like it's. I was shout out to another podcaster we just talked about. I was listening to that. I was another winemaker. It's weird. I didn't know him. He seems to be a legend. Charles Smith from Walla Walla.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Same thing. Like, and I like that he's very forward about that. His style of winemaking started organically. I'm gonna be honest. I didn't go to UC Davis. I finished UC Riverside. I did what I did there. Should I have gone to a school? Now I'm outside that conversation. I've had way too many years of consultants fees that I did pay later on for them to teach me stuff, internships under my belt. So everything else I'm gonna do through the cellar, as I am doing right now. Mm-hmm. So it was an organic entry point, and around 2016 is when. So I started in 2010. And then 2016, it was like, you know what, this hobby is a little bit too expensive, because
Yes.
once you're bringing French barrels into a garage at, $1,500 a barrel, right. Like you really, really need to, because what I think what the public doesn't know is when you make a wine in garage, you can't sell a dime of it. Like you're not licensed.
You become very popular with your friends.
Yeah, you become very popular with your friends, but you cannot sell a dime of it, and
Right.
it's because you're not a bonded winery. And so my father is a lover of wine. My sister, who's my partner in the business, like we love wine, and we love wine for its food components, for its hospitality component. And working in tasting rooms and then already in cellars as well, I started to understand that it is going to be a tough business, but you get into it because you love it. And you get into it because you meet like a very weird, cool group of people, and we kind of sustain each other. Like, and I'm not talking about Armenian wine. I'm just talking about just in general.
The wine community in general.
Yeah, wine community, hospitality community. And
it's a very small community, by the way.
Absolutely. Immediately, like initially, it's like you think it's very like far and wide, but like it then shrinks fast. And even more so in Northern California. So fast forward to 2016, we decided to do our first commercial bonded project, and I came to the world not through the wines I have here, but I came to the world through Malbec.
I know that.
Yeah, you do.
I've had that. Yes.
Yeah. And I still make it, and I have a very, very big love affair with Malbec and where Malbec in the Karin portfolio will be.
Why Malbec?
Easy. Working in a winery back then in Napa. So many stories. In Napa, in Sterling is the name. It's a huge winery. You go up on the gondola, great views. Great views,
Yes.
fun wines. And every Napa producer has Malbec in their portfolio, but it's mostly for blends, okay? And I thought that, I'm going to come to the market with a new product. Obviously, everything in my logic tells me go with the three known varieties, right? Cabernet, Chardonnay. We can talk about white later, or Pinot. Where I'm from directly is East Contra Costa County. This is where Klein Cellars does a lot of Bedrock Cellars. Mm-hmm. They do a lot. They source from very old vineyards in the East Contra Costa. There is no Pinot there. It's a hot area, so Pinot's out the way, and it's actually a grape I'm still nervous about approaching.
It's a very finicky
grape, very finicky. Malbec is finicky on the growing side, but I have the luxury of. That's actually why Bordeaux kind of got rid of it after the phylloxera.
Interesting. Okay.
Bordeaux was predominantly Malbec, and then after phylloxera, they just did away with it. So, what am I gonna do? As I'm seeing blends done in the cellars in Napa up and down, Malbec is always like this stepchild, and I'm drinking
on the cutting floor.
Yeah. And I'm drinking it, and I was at BV at one point, and they only through tasting rooms they would have it as a bottle, right? Never in supermarkets, never mass produced, because again, you don't want to compete with Mendoza, it's hard, or Cahors, you know what I mean? Like California decided Cabernet is our thing, so. But also California produces great wine, period. You know what I mean? So I was like, Malbec is going to be what I'm going to try to do. It's a Bordeaux, it's a Bordeaux grape.
Right.
It's a noble grape. And then I started sourcing not from Napa because those grapes are expensive, but in Contra Costa there was a great grower, which is actually the success story of Karin is matching with good growers. Because once the grape is good, all as a winemaker you need to do is not screw up. So, and I started making a Malbec 2011, 12. Added other varietals, showcased it to the community, made those friends that love me because I age them and fun. And Malbec just kind of grew to me. And like when I was working up and down Napa, I was like, every time people are like, why are you so interested in Malbec? I'm like, because I feel like it shows itself well in California, but we just don't care for it because I get it. The marketing just doesn't work. You know what I mean? So as a small producer, what am I going to differentiate myself with? Another cab? Another Chard, another Pinot? No, I'll just go with something different, you know? And, you know, in Malbec, kind of, people like it.
Yes.
You know, it's on the shelf, it goes off the shelf.
Yeah,
you know?
it has a name recognition.
Yeah.
And you called your winery Karin. Where does that name come from?
So Karin, so that name comes from the city of Karin, Erzurum, today in Eastern Turkey. We had a whole slew of things that we wanted to be as an entity. Once 2016 came around, already a lot of Garage East experimenting under the belt, what to do, how to kind of come forward. Another thing that working in the industry already, I started to notice that there's a lot of, you know, European heritage that interweaves in Napa and Sonoma, Italians, French, Irish, you know what I mean? And they're pretty proud about it. And as the Armenian kind of wine world is starting to like bubble up slowly, because we're talking about this is still like 2012, 13, 14, 15, right? I was like, you know, I want to bring a brand to be American. I'm an American boy. This is what I'm doing here, right? As these are, you know, Zinfandels and such. But I want the brand to be Armenian. So we kind of solidified on that as a family. By the way, this is a family brand.
I was going to ask.
Yeah. This is a family brand. I'm not a solo entity. This is
the whole family is invested in this.
The full family is in the LLC. It's these are my partners, and they carry the weight too. They, you know, not just in name or in, you know, in backing, but we do the hustle. My father, my sister, and I, and then my mom is just always there for us, and she pushes the right ideas, and she kind of breathes life to them. So we are a family entity. So we wanted to be Armenian, but we also wanted to get a name that's meaningful to us and also can be pronounced in the
very important.
in the American world. We were going to be Devine for the longest time because, you know, vine, right? But then, you know, that name's taken by Pernod Ricard.
Correct.
Because Devine is a sub-brand of Ararat.
Right.
So we ended up going with Karin. How did we end up? My father, so I told you we're from Tiflis. My father is from Jabach, which is a very Armenian-populated region of Georgia, south to the border of Turkey. Predominantly Armenian back in the day. Now it's more so 50-50. So growing up in the summers in Tiflis, I would be in villages of Jabach.
Oh, okay.
So, who are Jabachis? They are emigres of Karin. So their Barbara is Karinetsi. Barbara in Armenian is the
language.
Language and
dialect.
Yeah, dialect. Yeah. So, but then as we're like going through this whole we did a whole analytic approach of what do we do because we wanted to, you know, we want to be successful. And then my mom, because I knew that my father's from that side with him, and then my mom goes like, well, we're Lennagansi, which is Gyumritsi, right? But Gyumritsis are from Ghars, and Gharsetsis are from Karin. Okay. And I was like, and then
everything is related.
Yeah. And my sister was like, she's like, what if we just do Karin? And I was like, well, initially, and the funny thing is, like, because they're, you know, they're old school. They're like, you know, my dad's like Erzurum. I was like, I don't want to call the company Erzurum for some reason. I just, you know, like, and then my mom goes like, what about the way that Armenians called it or still call it? And I was like, how was it? And I Wikipedia says Karin. I was like, You know what? That's cool. Let's just do it. And it'll work. As you can see on the labels, we'll pull our culture. We'll keep integrating it. At times it gets confusing. I get an American. They go like, hey, is this an Armenian wine? I'm like, well, this is an Armenian-made wine.
Right.
Rose and I even made t-shirts that says, drink Armenian-made wine to include the diaspora too.
Right.
So that's how Karin came about. And I credit my sister for pushing because we were very close to like, in the infight of the family to just go like, Deer Ridge was even an option. Like it was a neighborhood we grew up in. Because my father is business minded. He goes like, let's just go with the kind of with an approach that'll be sellable. We'll still be Armenian producers. Everything is Armenian in the American soil, but let's give a name that's kind of palatable. I was against using my last name. Not because it's not Armenian, but because I worked for Rosenblum Cellars at the time when we were incorporating, and I knew how painful it was to sell. Once you if I make a name if I go popular with that last name and somebody buys it,
sure,
I can never make a wine with that last name again.
Assuming they paid you enough for it. So
yeah, right. Yes,
at that point, you're okay with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just saw so many stories of hardship, like the winemaker at Rosenblum at that time was the late Rosenblum's daughter, Shayna Rosenblum, who is now the winemaker at Ridge, and she had a winery. She was like, I can never use my last name ever again because Bronco, the parent company of Tubac Chuck, who I was the employee of, owns that name. And Kent, when he died, he was very happy. He died a rich man. But I don't know, for some reason I was like, Nemet Wines was just always, there's the Nemet family is in there now that we're wine growers.
Part of the story.
Now that we're growers as well, we have an estate. Like the vineyards will be Nemit. So like I tell my dad, don't worry, the last name's there. It's on my business cards. We're good. But the brand is Karin, and proudly so. There's so much we could lean into that Armenian Karinetsi story, and it's just like
And before. You just mentioned that you bought some vineyards. Tell us about where did you get the vineyards? And this is the first time you owned your own vineyards. Until now, you've been sourcing grapes from other vineyards.
Absolutely, yeah, and proudly so. I'll tell you why. Because we as wine drinkers on that side we think, you have to have an estate, but no. In California, we are blessed with great farmers, great grape farmers, and I will give my kind of homage to. So I come from a very interesting area. I said I worked in Napa. I love Sonoma. We explored Paso Robles for a long time.
Weren't you sourcing some grapes from Paso also for a while?
No, I was in connection with a Paso producer.
Okay. I know you had a connection with Paso.
Yeah, absolutely. And Paso is a great area, closer to LA. I love Santa Barbara. I mean, I'm like becoming a very big like California wine patriot. Learning more about greater American producers as well. But as I was kind of starting my wine journey, I'm from Contra Costa. We wouldn't do anything there. We never wanted to be...
For those people who are not from California, where is Contra Costa?
Bay Area. Okay. Contra Costa is probably some of the oldest surviving plantings in California, maybe even now the United States, are planted by Portuguese settlers of East Contra Costa, which is on the backside of Oakland. Let's call it that way. Let's do it that way.
Right.
In an area called the Sacramento River Delta. So between Oakland and Sacramento, essentially. That area, too saturated. The urban sprawl is kind of, consider it like Rancho Cucamonga. Like it's a great viticultural area. Many people
yes, it is.
Yeah, many people don't know, right? But everybody now knows it as just a sleeping community. Similar situation.
With a funny name.
With a funny name, yeah. And then so everybody, all roads started pointing towards Lodi. Lodi also has a little bit of that kind of chip on its shoulder where it has to kind of prove itself. And I liked it. I love networking with Lodi. Even now, I'm a Sierra Foothills producer, and we can talk about what that is.
We will, yeah.
But I love everything that Lodi did for me, and I think I love everything that Lodi does for American winemaking. I realize what everything that Lodi did for Napa. Lodi is one of his most popular sons is none other than Robert Mondavi, Woodbridge is a neighborhood
Yes.
of Lodi. So, but Robert did his primo stuff in Napa, and he made a jug wine in Lodi. So Lodi is doing a lot of very, very good groundwork now, trying to kind of decouple itself from that. And what Lodi is predominantly is a phenomenal growing community. So, because they're growers first, and that was a blueprint for great winemaking. So, once I started to source from that, the success started to pile up, and always wanted to be a grower as well. And 2.5 years ago, in November of 2023, we closed on a amazing plot of land in the Sierra Foothills. I say that slowly because growing is a whole different thing. There's a lot of winemakers that said don't go into that side of things, but I'm blessed that, with the family kind of on my side, we can do some very cool stuff now.
This is very interesting. And I appreciate you being here. I appreciate other people who are here. You see the evolution of the whole way of people get from point A to point B.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you buy the land, you buy the vineyards. Were these vineyards already planted?
Yes. So absolutely. Yeah. We currently own 40 acres with a 5-acre
In the Sierra Foothills?
In the Sierra Foothills, in an area called California Shenandoah Valley, because there is a Shenandoah Valley in Virginia. But we just go by the moniker and the label of the county. We're known by the county. Amador County wines are kind of becoming more popular. Just to give people an understanding, this is where the gold rush started.
Right.
This is where the 49ers came to.
Sutter's Mill?
Sutter's Mill is nearby, all that area. Jackson is a big... so everything that you see in that area is... little mining towns where the folks that migrated came to, and the Italians and the Portuguese actually that followed needed to provide something for all these prospectors to enjoy life, which was they started planting Zinfandel predominantly, and it's a Zinfandel country there as well, although now it's migrating into other so Sierra Foothills is a lengthier kind of label, but for everybody that doesn't know, outside of California, we just say Sierra Foothills. But just to give you an idea, Sierra Foothills is as big as, let's say, North Coast. You know what I mean? Like it's pretty huge. You know what I mean?
Right.
The other day we were doing an analysis with my father. So Sierra Foothills is the size of Artsakh. Exactly.
Wow.
That's crazy. Yeah. So and it's wide and varied, right? But the cluster is of wineries is in kind of 3 counties. It's in El Dorado, it's in Amador, and it's in Calaveras, where there's a town called Murphy's. So if you go to Murphy's, there's like 20 tasting rooms back to back. In Amador, it's more Napa style. Okay. It's wineries spread out. No, kind of close together, but not in a one city block kind of situation. More like you go to an estate, you go to a tasting room.
Gotcha.
It's more like if you've been to Napa Valley, it's kind of like that.
Okay.
Or strewn around like maybe 2 major roads, and the amount of wineries, it's 60 plus registered wineries. So
and you're getting a lot of wine tourism there?
Yes, absolutely. So that was another reason why we, as a family, obviously, business-minded, we don't have a wide reach, right? Sonoma, Napa were out of the reach for us. So I
was going to say, relatively more feasible.
Affordable,
compared to Sonoma,
feasible, yeah, absolutely.
Than Sonoma and Napa.
Absolutely. And even now with the industry, I have a big love affair for Sonoma, for its diversity. Napa is a phenomenal place. I do have a lot of opinions on it. It's definitely the mecca of Californian American winemaking, but it's done a lot of things that I want to kind of warn other areas to be cautious about. It's very, very successful, but its success is sometimes giving it a lot of limitations as well.
And this 40-acre that you own is a one big parcel of 40 acres?
One big parcel. It's almost like a square. Not flat. It's a very, very varied topography. It's a beautiful parcel.
And that's going to create or produce different flavors or different notes in your wine.
Absolutely.
It is mostly planted with Zinfandel?
No. Actually, so this is where we can dovetail to what we
do that.
have. Yeah. So it is Amador County. County is the largest planting of Barbera. outside of
Piedmont.
outside of Piedmont. Yes, yeah, because California has a big kind of history with Italian varietals. Zinfandel being kind of, let's call it Italian,
From southern Italy,
Croatian, whatever.
Southern Italy.
I won't offend
not get into
anybody
that
on that
discussion
side.
there.
Yeah, we're not gonna.
That's another podcast.
Absolutely. But Zinfandel is to me the most Californian grape, as we call it now.
Right.
But Barbera is the largest planting outside. It does well in Amador, and everybody in Amador grows
But
Barbera.
when you make not this style of
Yeah.
Barbera, but when you're making a red
Barbera, which we make as well, yeah.
you're not making Italian wine. You're making California wine.
Absolutely, yeah. You're making a California wine, just like like when Napa is making Bordeaux blends. It's not making a Bordeaux wine. It's making
A lot of people try to make Burgundy from
Yeah,
California
yeah,
Pinot Noir grapes,
and
that doesn't work.
That doesn't
You
work,
should call it what it is.
Absolutely. So, but the grape is Barbera, and we make a Barbera. And to be honest with you, as a winemaker, we talked about. I started with Malbec, so my experimentation. Barbera is new to me, and I'm just trying to figure it out now. I'm drinking a lot of Barbera. I'm learning a lot about Barbera. Barbera is becoming more popular with the younger drinkers again because it has a very good acid kick. Okay, so that one component is already there. Everything else we're starting to learn from it, how it can do.
How to that point? How has your winemaking changed from the beginning to now?
Yes, my winemaking is so. Sterling, Rosenblum, a lot of industrious winemakers. I have been in every component more and more working into the place where I am now, which is, and my sister, by the way, is an assistant to ours. So she's been at an internship in Chile. So it's a true partnership. The style that Karin is making now is what I would call a low intervention. And clearly, by the wine you have near you, I am very much into experimentation because California is such a pleasurable, diverse place. Now, as someone that kind of came into wine through Napa, through European, we want to kind of concentrate on something, but I'm spoiled. I can do what I want to do right now, and that's where I am. So what Karin is, we are on the organic side of everything. Every grape that I've ever bought was always sustainably farmed. Why? Because it produces a better product, just hands down. That being said, I'm not saying that everybody should only do this, or that. Certifications are expensive. So, for example, we right now are converting our vineyard into an organic vineyard, but I don't know if I will certify because those are two different conversations.
Right.
As a winemaker, I am going towards the lesser intervention. I will stop short of being a natural winemaker. So that's where I'm going. And that's my, in terms of in the cellar.
Your winemaking skills, though, are allowing you to do what you want to do right now. But your skills have evolved over time.
Absolutely.
From working in large industrial wineries, like you mentioned, then doing a boutique wines right now, where people expect customers have different expectations.
Absolutely.
From Rosenblum compared to Karin.
Absolutely. Shout out to Rosenblum. As it was purchased by Bronco, it was turned into a mass producer. In its heyday, it was it essentially was the pioneer of Zinfandel. You know what I mean? We're talking about 99, 95, 2001. Even 10 years even before I started there.
Right.
Yes, you're right. I'm a boutique producer. I'm a small scale producer. Everything is handcrafted. That's the style.
What else do you have on your vineyards besides Barbera?
That's it for now. So right now we have 5 acres of Barbera, and as anyone.
So the rest is vacant.
The rest
unplanted?
is vacant. Unplanted, absolutely. So the rest is to be continued, right? So right now the parcel is a well-rooted 14-year-old. So for a vineyard to be 14 years, the root structure is there. It's great. It's a 14-year-old Barbera vineyard of 5 acres, and the rest is what we're planning to do.
What are you planning to do?
Excellent question. So the being Armenian, and I know this is can be a little bit of a hot topic, but I go around and I see actually a neighboring winery is Georgian in the area. So now there's already an Armenian and a Georgian in the area. Georgians are planted in New York.
I know.
People know Rakatsiteli.
There's
they
a
know,
big winery upstate New York.
Yeah. Not even Georgian. It has
But the owner is Georgian.
Is Georgian? Okay. So
With
again,
an American name,
Yeah.
and they hold a Georgian wine festival there every year.
there you go. We're bringing in Areni and we're going to plant Areni. And the bringing in process is kind of also a story in and of itself. Armenians, Fresno, why hasn't Areni been in the country so far? Well, I don't know why, but when we went to UC Davis, and UC Davis has a cuttings library of pretty much everything in the world, we said, hey, can we just pull an Areni from you guys? And because you have to do everything correctly here. You
Right.
can't just like bring it in a
In
your bag, as much as some movies in Hollywood showed it. But if the FDA starts snooping around, they're gonna be like, "Where'd you get this obscure Areni grape?"
Right.
It's not like I'm doing a Cabernet or a Pinot Noir. So we're bringing it in through UC Davis through the proper channels.
Okay.
Right now, it's in their hands, and once they kind of bring it out to us,
Are these specific grain, or what do you call
this?
clones?
Yeah,
Are
this
these
is-
specific clones of Areni?
Yes, this is a specific clone of Areni from Viodzor, from a
Good.
producer that I really, I think, I checked all boxes. Yeah, we can talk about this. It's from a dear friend, Kareen Wine in Viodzor.
I've met them.
Yeah.
I've had their wines.
Yeah. So it's from their vineyard. So we'll have
In Viodzor?
in Viodzor. So it's like it's so, and you can educate me as well. I know that Areni, just like I hold a tasting group in Berkeley, and we just did a whole study on Chianti and Sangiovese, right? There's 105 different Sangiovese clonal variations. I think Areni also, Areni is not just a monotype.
Well, I know there's different clones.
There's a the variation, right?
Correct. There are. I'm not sure exactly what they are.
Same.
But I know there's more than one, and different parts of the country have planted different clones. Those were more adaptable to the geography and the weather and sub-appellation of that region. So some are more adaptable to heat than others. The Arad Valley does differently than Viodzor.
Absolutely. So as you can tell, right, we are kind of on the experimental edge of what Areni will do. But as American Armenian producers, we understand that we absolutely must bring Armenian grapes into the new world. Why? Because this is the new world. You know what I mean? This is where, if Rakatsiteli is in upstate New York,
Right.
why shouldn't Areni be in
Do you know
California?
if anybody else has already planted or producing Areni grapes in California? Or Voskehat, for that matter?
I wish you wouldn't ask me, but this kind of goes into our more community. So I go to UC Davis. Actually, my father goes to UC Davis and inquires about. So initially, we didn't want to take on this task, which is a very arduous task. Some guy, I don't know, will be nameless, in Missouri, brought in 10 years ago Areni cuttings and just is holding the patent on it and doesn't want to let it go. Myself and other winemakers.
What do you mean patents?
Like when you bring it in, right? It's kind of your project. So the Nemit family just is bringing in Areni right now through UC Davis. And again, I'm not bringing shade on anyone. I don't want to.
Right.
This is not a. The point is that UC Davis said in their library there is an Areni cutting that was brought in around 11 plus years ago, maybe more. And it is currently, there was an experimental planting somewhere in Missouri. Maybe through your network you can figure out who that is.
I've never heard of this. Okay.
I still don't know who this person is, but the answer to me was no, you can't have it.
From them.
Yes, from them.
So you have to bring your new one.
Yeah. So this is what I will explain to the listeners, right? When UC Davis will now give us this Kriya Viodzor cutting,
Right.
we will then have to spend 3 more years before we can even plant, propagating that particular, because right now it's just going to be like 6 to 12 cuttings, okay? We will then have to plant them, propagate them into vines to multiply them because we want to plant acres of it. We want to experiment. We're going to start doing trials because, like you said, right? Is it going to adapt? Is it going to? How am I going to vinify them in the cellar? Am I going to go low intervention? I'm going to go heavy oak. How is that going to happen? We will determine because now it's in California terroir. It's the evolution of the Armenian story in the New World. That's gonna take. My father's even, he's 70. He's like, oh man, maybe I won't see this. I'm like, no, Dad,
Well, that's
you
and
will
the most
see it. Yeah,
interesting
you-
part of that is
yeah,
the fact that
yeah.
it's going to take at least 10 years before you make a single bottle of wine.
Absolutely. Because then once we already propagate 1,000 cuttings,
Right.
which we need for an acre plus, we then will see the first time I can make wine from it. Bad wine is 3 years after that, and a good wine 5 to 6 years after that. So this is a very, very, it's a labor of love. In the meantime, I'll be selling a lot more of this and kind of growing the Karin story until the Areni story within the Karin portfolio kind of kicks in. That being said, let me just dovetail back to that gentleman. It's a gentleman. That could have cut a lot of time. Time is what would have been.
But does he have the clones that you're looking for? You want to plant?
I'll be honest with you. I don't know what clones I'm looking for.
Maybe this could be academic, this whole conversation,
Absolutely.
given that
Could be,
it's
could
not
be.
what you're looking for.
Could be. But it's out of quarantine. It's already in America. It's already certified. It's already plantable. It's already planted, I think. And I think the project just kind of didn't go. And I don't know why Missouri.
By the way,
I don't know why
I've heard
Missouri,
of a guy
yeah.
in Glendale. He brought in few cuttings from Armenia, and he's got some vines planted in Glendale.
Sure, that's cool. I mean, one day I think once we have a lot of Areni in California, which by the way, that's a story in and of itself. I think Areni will be an interesting project in California. It'll take decades for it to even take off with other winemakers. But I right now love seeing what a lot of Greeks are doing, like with their varietals in California.
There's a Greek winery in Central Coast, Santa Barbara area.
Absolutely,
They're doing a pretty good job with it.
Absolutely. So like, California is essentially a test kitchen for a lot of good stuff.
I mean, we brought in the French, the Italian.
Absolutely. Why not Armenian, right?
Right.
That being said, I know sometimes Armenians like, oh, Areni should always stay in Armenia. No, I agree with you.
Same reason we should also plant Merlot near Armenia.
Yeah, we want to see what's going on. We want to play with the soil types. Is my Areni gonna be like Vajadzor? I know it's not gonna be.
Right.
Which I'm not. I'm not foolish enough to think
But
that.
I
way.
would be curious to see, to taste what it's going to taste
Absolutely.
like
Absolutely.
compared with the Areni from Vajadzor, where here in California in your vineyards.
Absolutely.
What else you're trying to plant there? What other varietals?
It's a different story. The area, it needs a little bit more white. It's like an 85% red for various reasons. Chenin Blanc is a grape that I work with heavily. I like Chenin Blanc, some of the best producers. Chenin Blanc was big in California, and then it just got traded over for Chardonnay. So Chenin Blanc will be something that I will be planting as well. So I'll be Areni planting, Chenin Blanc planting, and it's all happening now. Much easier to go and source Chenin Blanc than it is Areni.
And you plan on having a tasting room?
Absolutely, yes. So this is the next phase is where we are trying to develop the property. It's a lot that goes in. I make wines in different facilities right now, but I want to bring it all under the same one roof. And we are, even opened up the idea of bringing in partners, and we are right now looking to develop that land, and the tasting room is absolutely the most important component of it.
And I'm glad we're having this conversation because I want our audience, listeners, viewers to know what it takes to buy a vineyard, make wine, get a winery going, and have a tasting room. Most people just go to Santa Barbara, Paso, Napa, knock on the door, go in, pay whatever the amount is, and taste 5-6 wines. Someone will sign up to a wine club. Others, they just taste it, which is great. It's fine too. But a lot goes into that before that door is open in the tasting room.
Absolutely.
It's a lengthy, expensive process.
It's a lengthy, expensive process, and you really have to have the passion for it. A lot of times along the way, you wonder, like, is this it? But you gotta keep going. To the consumers out there, support boutique producers, support producers out of Armenia, and just smaller producers in California in general. We really, really need it right now. There's a little bit of a a little bit of a dip in the consumption, or in just the wine is going through a little bit of a readjustment right now. And Kareen Wine, we decided as a family that we're gonna like brave through the storm. I already have friends that folded shop. I know
Really?
a lot. Yeah, absolutely. Not Armenians, but people who started out and then they're like, this is too much.
Well, along those lines, winemaking is directly related to agriculture.
Absolutely.
So every year there's a difference in agriculture. That's what creates the variations in vintages, taste, and low harvest, high harvest. I mean, things change every year.
Yields.
Economy changes every year. So you have to deal with not only natural elements, but economic elements as well.
Absolutely.
To consistently produce the best possible wine and offer it to the consumer.
Absolutely. The year prior to us buying that, because once you buy a vineyard, they'll give you a historical analysis of who they sell to. Lots of stories there. But one of the things, 2023 is when we bought it. 2022, in April in the Sierra Foothills was a frost snap. And yields went down by 85%.
Oof.
So you can tell what
that hurts.
Last year same thing happened in British Columbia, where I think they completely canceled the vintage.
They didn't make ice wine.
Yeah, they made nothing. They canceled the vintage. Yeah, they didn't make ice wine at all. It was they canceled the vintage. So yes, wine is very finicky. It's agriculture.
Correct.
You know what I mean? And then last year, after buying it, it was a beautiful kind of story where we had a lot of contracts with this. So you have 5 acres overnight. You have to produce a lot, right? Of a grape that you really don't know that much. I'll be honest. I didn't study Barbera. I didn't understand it that much, but I understood that area produces it well. Overnight, all the contracts from Napa producers that were buying our grape, that 5 acres, were all under contract. I was only picking 3 tons of it for myself.
Oh, wow, okay.
So 2023, only 3 tons. This is part of it. This last year, I had to vinify everything or choose to keep all the grapes rotting on the vines, because that's how fast the winds have changed in the wine.
Well, some farmers do that actually.
Absolutely. Well, they had to.
That's the least expensive proposition.
Yeah.
Imagine no labor added, additional, no bottle, no glass, no winemaking, no cellaring.
Right.
That's the least expensive of all the bad choices.
That of all the bad choices, we kind of had that. We were like, well, you know what I mean? Like, because imagine you have tons and tons of contracts, and overnight I was actually driving and I heard one of the customers went belly up through NPR. I was like, oh my God, they're gone. They're not gonna buy anymore. I immediately called the winemaker. I was like, hey, and she was like very nice, and she was like, let's think about it. But in my head, I was like, no, they're gonna cancel. And surely, by the time May rolled around, they said, sorry, we're just no longer buying any grapes. But that's the name of the game. Once you start getting in, so now Karin absorbed all of that production, and this year I have a very, very, very ambitious rollout of what we are doing from our estate wine.
And you're only making now wine from your estate wines?
No. I will because there's the estate wine production, right, and then there's the continuation of your channel, right. Malbec will always be part of my portfolio. I love it. It's kind of my noble grape, I like what Barbera can do, but I'm still working and figuring it out. So right now I have in production, this is a Pet-Nat of Barbera. My whites are Chenin Blanc and Viognier. This is a Viognier from Lodi, and Chenin Blanc is also not from Sierra Foothills. It's also from an area lesser known called Clarksburg, AVA.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of on the delta. A beautiful area, flatlands. But I'm gonna continue because I have good relationships, and they like once you dial in that grape, like you just want to stay with it. And once you talk to that farmer, you're like, you know what, we'll continue. So these relationships I'm gonna continue fostering. But my largest production now, absolutely, is Barbera. Okay. So,
and this is it for. Is this the Barbera you're making, right? Or you're also making a red Barbera?
I make a red Barbera, which is quite delicious. The label wasn't ready. I actually wanted to just bring you a bottle unlabeled, and a rosé. And now I make the largest production is going to be labeled in October and bottled, and it's a kind of a semi-carbonic, kind of a lighter, juicier version of a
I look forward to that.
Of a Barbera. Yeah.
Okay, if I remember correctly, you have also rebranded a little bit, correct?
Yes.
Because this is not your traditional Karin labels.
Yes, that's true.
Is that do you still make wines under the old label, or this is you branched out into this label?
Good question. So as a brand, we're still figuring ourselves out. I just released two wines, a Petit Syrah and a Syrah from 2021. My first time making wine in the Sierra Foothills.
Okay.
Those two wines just got released, and that's still under that brand, that label that you're familiar with. It's that, we always keep the, the arevachach is one of the most important parts. We will always
Right.
want it. That's kind of part and parcel to the identity, and we kind of want to have some kind of a Armenian writing, and even on the classic labels, they were there. So we're still with that. A lot of the Malbecs that I produce are still going to continue having that. This was just the direction we wanted to go towards because we wanted to start interacting with artists. And this is a rendition of an amazing Armenian artist from Glendale. Her name is Nelia Stotsaturian. We met in Berkeley, and I just kind of always wanted to have that relationship. And this is a great Palestinian San Francisco illustrator and muralist. Like, there's walls in San Francisco painted by this gentleman. It's Chris Gazalia, and he was so kind enough to kind of collaborate with us on this as well. So that was something that we always wanted to do in Karin. How that transitioned, it's because, yes, we want to be a little bit more leaning into like the artisanal, the cultural, and be a little bit more forward about it. So that's where we are. So this is kind of our future, but where it's going to land, we're still figuring it out.
And given that natural, organic, biodynamic wines are growing at a faster rate than your legacy wines,
Let's call it
so to
that,
speak,
yeah.
this is the direction where a lot of newer winemakers are taking or going. Not only the packaging, rather the winemaking style as well. And here we have a Pet-Nat. For our people who don't know what Pet-Nat is, can you explain what a Pet-Nat is?
Yeah. Pet-Nat is the true French statement is Pétillant Naturel. It's the naturally occurring sparkling wine. So this is kind of an ancient tradition of making a sparkling wine. It's let's say champagne is at 6 psi pressures. This is at 3, so it's a lighter. So this is essentially there are many ways of doing this. One way is to doing through an interruption process. So essentially, as the wine ferments, you trap it in the bottle, and the fermentation finishes in the bottle.
Right.
And this crown cap, stops traps the carbon.
And there's no secondary fermentation here.
And there's no secondary, and this is how it's essentially becomes a trapped product. This is the carbonation, and here we are. That being said, obviously the biggest kind of thing that to a traditional drinker, it's unfiltered.
Correct.
So what happens to this, and this is everything with Karin, we have a continuity. This is my study into making actual sparkling wine. This also can be a beginning process of sparkling, because all sparkling wines go through something like this, right? Obviously, they make a still, and then they do dosage. Then you tip it over, right? And then you do riddling, right? Everything gets trapped in here. You can freeze it. You can clarify this. You can, pops it out, and then we can put a cork in it. But currently, this is the kind of the easier way of going, and actually a lot of people are reacting to it. It's a faster open.
No, absolutely. Yeah, this is very popular right now. Very smart. Through the magic of podcasting, we got a bucket here.
Excellent. I like it.
And a couple of glasses.
Yeah.
Let's pop this open.
Yeah. Very easy peasy picnic wine. But eventually, sparkling Barbera is the direction that I'm going.
Oops.
And that's one of the issues of a Pet-Nat.
By the way,
It's fair.
I have had in Piedmont, there's a winery, Contorno, that I'm familiar with. They do make an amazing sparkling Barbera.
Yeah.
But they harvest the grapes much earlier than the Barberas for making other still red wines.
Yes.
And because they want the higher acid.
Acid, yeah. And the funny thing is, where I'm learning for a Barbera, So a good lesson learned here right now on the spot. I like that this happened. when you purchase a Pet-Nat, drink it extremely, extremely cold. This is kind of one of the volatilities of a Pet-Nat. So, and the lesson here is Pet-Nats always drank very, 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 very cold. So,
Right. Cheers to you.
cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh. Okay. This is very pleasant.
Amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
This is very, very pleasant. Tell me, and then what do you have in the nose here?
So the nose are kind of like a lighter red. So like I'm picking up a little bit of a pomegranate. The pomegranate rind. Obviously, being that it is a Barbera, it kicks with acidity, which very, very, very lifted product. The one thing that unfiltered all the way.
Right. And people want this though. People. When you talk about Pet-Nat, you don't want to filter it.
True. The difference is that there is a way to clarify it, and Rose and I were constantly thinking. So we come from an area right now that's kind of expanding, especially in the urban lands.
Mm-hmm.
There is a buyer that absolutely doesn't care. But I have a club, right, which is a kind of a growing little supporter club, very near and dear to us. And the age group is quite varied there.
Okay.
There are certain people that I have to hey, don't worry. It's an unfiltered product. Think about it as an organic apple. I have to kind of.
Interesting. You should say it.
Right.
You do get some apple here.
Absolutely. The problem is that the buyer that's a little bit kind of on the older side just can't get past that. Why is it not clarified? There is a way to just settle it out, riddle it, and clarify it, and that's something that we may consider in the
But
the
you
future.
don't want to use any egg whites?
No, I'm not using any egg whites as of yet. No. The other thing that you'll notice as you drink this, right, as opposed to a champagne, again, people coming into this is a light, fun wine, acidic. You keep this bottle open long enough that you'll see the difference in the pressure of the champagne versus this. This will turn into a still wine over the course of the dinner. Okay, so the bubbles are not as fine, obviously. And
alcohol is not that low. I thought it would be lower.
This is California. Yes. Again, the alcohol is not no because we picked this at around 24, 25.
Bricks.
Right, bricks. Yeah. So that gives you the.
I've seen as low as 11%.
Absolutely. This is something that I'm experimenting with. So this is the first Barbera Pet-Nat. I just bottled my second of the same estate.
And how is this vintage or non-vintage?
I put the year on it, but it's there's obviously in terms of what is vintage, non-vintage, we don't declare.
Right.
Yeah.
And people who drink these types of wines, natural, organic, Pet-Nat, how is this wine being received?
They love it. So it's still so this is a second Pet-Nat I made. First was of Chenin Blanc.
And that's obviously yellowish color.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. By the way, Barbera Blanc is something I'm going to experiment with as well.
That's interesting.
It's the more I learn about Barbera, the more I'm like, okay, I got 5 acres and I want to sell a bunch of it to other producers, but right now it's all mine. So I'm gonna experiment, and we're gonna have fun with it. There's a Malbec Blanc that's on the rise. You should research it. It's harvested very, very early. 11% is as most as it goes, so very acidic.
Okay.
And in Argentina, it's starting to pick up. So the wine world is expanding. And
I've had white Merlot.
White Merlot, yeah. Thoughts? I haven't.
It was interesting. It smelled it tastes like Merlot, but not the color. There's no color, no skin.
What I'm learning, back to your question about the evolution of the consumer. And by the way, I'm gonna tip my hat off to all the classic producers. I love those wines. These are the wines that I grew up with and still drink. But I also gravitate towards this new cohort of producers, and I'm researching and I'm learning about them. The mecca of it is obviously France, like everything.
Right.
The new consumer wants something different, you know what I mean? And they want something fun. They want something interesting. They want something, not to call classic wines not interesting, but they just want to kind of go.
Well, these are the younger consumers, the 21 to 40-year-olds.
Absolutely. And just like myself, I'm doing this as a study to then produce a sparkling wine, right? To then produce a more classically made wine. I think a lot of times these drinkers, we bring them into the fold, and then they seek out other things as well. You know what I mean? Like,
is that the evolution?
that is the
of wine
evolution.
drinking?
Yeah. I mean, like, you can kind of think back on yourself. I'll kind of throw it back to myself. I see, especially working tasting rooms, not just cellars. I would see, like, what is the number one thing that a new wine drinker wants? A sweet. I want a sweet wine. Can I get a sweet wine? Not dessert wine, a sweet wine,
Right.
which is mostly
Fruit-forward. Yeah.
poorer for the, and it's just something that your palate kind of evolves. And yes, a lot of these kids are gonna start to transition. I'm not saying that I want to see this the segment population of this to dissipate. No, there will always be a new entrant, and yes, it's been very, very well received, and I'm happy that I'm going in that direction because it opens up a lot at a time when it's really hard. I'm not venture backed. I'm not in Napa. I'm not in Paso even. But I'm in a very cool area that has very good farming and good soils, and is gonna produce Barbera. Who would have thought I'm gonna be making Barbera in
Right.
California?
It chose you.
It chose me. It chose me. It was on that beautiful property that I extend a warm welcome of invitation even before we build. Anytime you're in Northern California, please stop by.
Thank you.
I recently built a shed on it, so now there's more stuff going on, and there's a couple of cows that I let venture through, but not in the vineyard. So yeah, this is the new kid on the block, although it's an old kid. Petit-Land Natural. It's an ancient
Correct.
Correct. production that then got refined in Champagne and in other regions. I'm happy. I'm happy also what it does, if you notice. Yes, you mentioned that there's a Barbera done in a sparkling production in Piedmont that you've heard of. Shout out to Sharon Harris of Rare Cat. She just bottled a sparkling Barbera.
Really?
I think out of I don't know.
She's in Napa,
Yeah,
isn't
she's
she?
in Napa. Yeah. Rare Cat Wines. Shout out to Rare Cat doing cool things. Very, very good classically made wine. And I just see on her Instagram, she says, "Hey, Barbera sparkling." I was like, "Hey," Sharon, buy my Barbera. I'll give you. I have good fruits. So we're chatting. But this is a fun way in Pet-Nats. You can essentially, is there a grape you like? Let's try it as a sparkling method.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that Champagne can do. You know what I mean? Something that other places can't necessarily do. We have that ability and a little bit of that freedom to play around.
Now you make this wine.
Mm-hmm.
How do you sell it? Who do you sell it to?
Great question. So I have a dedicated club. That's like these people I love, I adore. Because to a small producer, that direct to consumer,
Absolutely.
you know the world is your bread and butter. I also sell through my website. My website is the other, and I also now sell.
What's your website called?
KareenWine.com.
Very well.
That's where we are. So there's that component. Also now I have contracted with a consulting group. I was limited to only California because America is one country, but it's really 50 different countries. Every
Correct.
state has its own regulation,
Right.
and every state needs a license. And as a small producer, it's really hard to just buy them all. I contract out to a company called Vino Shipper, and through that, I can now sell to every state.
Again,
And-
direct to consumer.
Direct to consumer. Now, on the wholesale, which is actually becoming now 70% of my overall annual sales, I have a small network of very, very lovely shops and restaurants from Bay Area to LA. Nothing yet in outside of California. On Sunday, I'm flying to Washington, D.C., because my fiance, who I met through the wine world, she's Palestinian, imports Lebanese and Palestinian wines. Her group out there has a distribution in D.C., and
Great.
and they're picking us up for that D.C. market. But, D.C. is D.C., and then because I'm from New York, going back to my origin story in America, and I have family in Massachusetts, those are the next two states that I want to kind of contract to be picked up by a wholesaler, by a distributor.
Right.
So to those that don't know, other places, other states, you can direct sell to, right, to individuals through Vino Shipper or acquisition of your own licenses, or you can contract with a wholesale distributor, and
They'll do it for you.
They'll do it for you. Some do it better than others. That's a different conversation.
That's true.
It's a different conversation. But here in California, we will most likely try to, for the next few years, we'll stay self-distributed. If you know anybody that's awesome like yourself, please send them my way. Regionally, I don't mind being distributed. I have nothing against that. But right now, I have a nice little network of shops that I sell to. That's what's consuming most of my
And that's
most
great.
of my life.
Can you explain to people what does it take, though, introducing this wine to a retail store? How does that process work?
Yes, that's where I think you know this. That's where kind of the rubber meets the road. So let's say you want to go into a shop, right? I have my rule is a rule of 5. It's 5 touch points to a sale. Sadly, it's a little bit too laborious. I wish the roads were a little bit more open.
Right.
I rely on a lot of connections. Like, for example, if I have to go to a shop, I'll ask you, hey, do you know who that shop is owned by? And can I use your name? And maybe I can kind of get a name.
Speed the process.
Speed the process. But in general, you go in. There's usually a buyer, or as I call them, the gatekeeper of the entity. And until you're well known, and there's so much good wine. There's great. I mean, the consumer today lives in a mecca of great wine diversity. So until you're well known or until you're sought after, the process is this: you go in, you talk to, hey, who's the buyer here? I like your shop. I have this portfolio of wines. This is what I do. I make tech sheets, which are kind of essentially like a selling points of the wine. You then most likely you're never said, oh, yes, let's taste today. No, it's usually I taste on such and such days, come back later. Which becomes a little bit harder to do it from Northern California to LA, right?
Yes.
I have to start that process via email, and if you know anything about emails, those get kind of answered the least, or it's up to that particular relationship building.
Nothing beats face to face.
Nothing beats face to face. So then that buyer will say, yeah, I taste on Tuesdays. Well, today is a Thursday, so okay, cool. I don't know. I'm leaving on Saturday. That's my trouble in California, in Southern California. In Northern California, I can do that. So then they'll tell you what the date is. You'll sit down. They'll taste with you, and the feedback's always been good. You sometimes have to match the style of the place that you go to, right?
You got to know what to show them.
You got to know what to show them. Yeah. And we in Karin, we make. We're a little bit. We're starting to have a breadth, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. I was known as the guy that makes Malbec.
No, it's a good thing. It opens up more opportunities, more stores, more possibilities.
Problem being, then you have to kind of you have to hound those buyers.
Oh, absolutely.
That's sales.
You got to hustle.
You got to hustle. So there's kind of the in a nutshell how we do it. We're right now shop heavy, and I'm actually something that I wanted to identify. I love the shops that buy us. I want more Armenian-owned shops to kind of take note of us here in LA. And I'll work on that. But I want to pivot a little bit towards restaurant relationships as well. In 2020, restaurants were decimated, right? COVID, all that stuff. And now they're kind of starting to pick back up a little bit. But, that relationship is kind of all of our wholesale, I want to say 10% is to restaurants, 90% is to shops.
And you think because restaurants build brands?
I want to say yes, because I had the opportunity of building a wine program, and I saw the kind of the intricacies in Sacramento. We did that. I bought some wines from you because the proprietor was Armenian, is Armenian, and we wanted to add that component. It's a little bit no. Shops and restaurants are similar if the shop and / restaurant has that built-in salesmanship inside of it. I would love to be kind of enter back into a restaurant or into a shop. My life just won't allow me yet. Because if I can hand sell, I can hand sell. And yes, in restaurants, there's a lot more hand selling. You come to a bar, a sommelier comes to you. What are you looking for? Would you like something interesting? I know how to sell this. another reason why these labels are evolving is in a shop position, I want my label to stand out, right?
Correct.
But in a I don't expect somebody to go, yes, I would like a Kareen Pet-Nat Barbera, but if I'm a sommelier, I'm like, oh, you're a sparkling drinker? Oh, do you want to try something different? Oh yeah, okay, let's do that. And in restaurants, you have that option.
Right.
Yeah, so
Restaurants
yes,
were properly not administered, but staffed
right.
with the right people.
If everywhere, yeah. If it's done correctly, it's done well. So it's.
But it's a time-consuming, evolving, expensive process to sell wine.
Very, very.
You got to constantly open bottles for people to taste, and it's just a long evolving. And it also takes time until you develop a relationship with that buyer.
Absolutely.
Once you have a good relationship,
it's a beautiful thing.
We still have to introduce, you still have to produce a great bottle of wine. You still have to have a competitive price, but at least you've overcome certain relationship obstacles.
True. And sometimes you understand, even especially on the smaller scale, right? Boutique wineries, we deal with boutique shops, right? We started selling commercially in LA in the pandemic. I want to say a third of my contacts like dried up here. So there's that cycle as well, you know. And it's just due to the cyclical nature of things. Small businesses sometimes don't do well.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you don't always want to be like, oh, well, are you going to be around forever? Because then I'll sell to you. So you can't. That's a gamble. So it's a hustle. It's a beautiful hustle. I like to do more hustle in LA. San Diego's an area I'm kind of now trying to target. I don't have anything there, and I want to. I went there once, but just an understanding. Just going to a market once won't necessarily produce anything. Yeah. You got to go again and again.
Part of the reason is because you're also competing with hundreds of other salespeople.
Absolutely.
And some of the big boys who've got thousands of wines, and they're giving away things as well sometimes. So you have to deal with that, compete with that. But nevertheless, it's a challenge. We've all accepted it. We all do it, and we love it.
And we love
because it's ups and downs, but we deal with it. You touched on this earlier. How has your taste buds changed over the years? Or evolved or changed?
Yes. Good question. So, do we want to talk about like initial from the first time?
Yes.
So you come into wine, right? And I have a keen belief. But by the way, I even went down the Court of Master Sommeliers program for a little bit. I think everyone can fine tune their taste. So that's my basic level. Yes, there are better, like for example, my fiance, her nose is better than mine. I know that for a fact. But tastes evolve. There's something that you kind of gravitate towards. Initially, why the younger drinker needs that kind of bolder, in your face, like even nowadays with the natural winemakers that I network a lot, right? What do they gravitate towards? They're, high acid. But that's also a bright note. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Whether it's lots of sugar, lots of fruit, or high acid, those are bright notes. They're not, or high alcohol, right? I have evolved from kind of loud to a little bit more toned down. That's where my taste buds have gravitated towards. Red is king. Red does a lot, but I feel like I'm gravitating towards whites more and more. Why? I don't know. I personally, as a winemaker, I also don't think that there's a bad grape. There's just bad winemaking.
You think so? I disagree with that. You can make a bad wine from good grapes, but you cannot make good wine from bad grapes.
True. Yeah. I'm talking about more about like the more I discover varietal, it's matching the right. We're talking about matching the terroir. Like I'm about to bring in Areni. How's it gonna do in Sierra Foothills? Who knows, right? But it's also winemaking styles to that particular grape. So the options are infinite in the winemaking world. And I've had some, like for example, Malbec, right? You said you tried a white Merlot. I never thought that I would be interested in a white Malbec, but picked at 19 to 20 bricks. That's really early on, right? So that it produces only like 11% at most, right? That's a completely different animal than a heavy Malbec. You know what I mean? So who would have thought? So that is what I'm talking about when I think like there is no bad grape. Sure, I'm still not haven't made a Pinot Noir. Why? Because I'm nervous of it. You know what I mean? Like as a winemaker, like I hate bad Pinot Noir. It's horrible Pinot Noir. Just don't ever drink it. That's how I feel. But great Pinot Noir is phenomenal. So I'm evolving. I think I'm a little bit more toned down. The winemaking style was always going to be right. This is 13, 14%, but this is California, right? I always gravitated towards a little bit of, on the leaner side, even with something as pronounced as Cabernet, right? Or Malbec. Let's bring it down while maintaining the the flavor component.
Right.
I don't want a grassy red wine, just because vegetative red wine, just because you picked because of bricks. You pick on taste, not on bricks alone. So that's where my taste has evolved. I've kept an open mind. That's why we're drinking a Pet-Nat. Grigor 15 years ago probably I would have thought of a Pet-Nat, but I probably...
Well, did you even know what a Pet-Nat was 15 years ago?
Right.
You knew champagne.
Right. I knew champagne. I knew... I appreciate knowing that there's sparkling wine outside of champagne.
Right.
I recently learned that the biggest sparkling wine drinkers per capita are Germans. Didn't know
Really?
that. Yeah, like a distributor told me that. And I kind of fact-checked it. And sect is like... That's why there's not even a lot of sect out in the world, because they just consume it all in Germany. So... I love sparkling wine. That's kind of because of my love affair with white wine. That's the palate's evolving, but I have an idea of what I want to produce. I want to produce a wine that's flavorful. I want you to understand the flavor once you drink it. So there's something there, and I don't need it to be necessarily bold. But if it's bold, it'll be well integrated. One thing I notice is a big problem, and I don't want to say a problem. We have to sell immediately. That's another reason.
Most wines are made to be sold.
Exactly, right. But one, like I said, I hold a tasting group in Berkeley, and we're studying, Chianti and Tuscan wines, right? Europe has figured out that fourth component, which is age, right? Age does a lot to a wine. And sometimes we just don't get to see that in California. So aging wines is something that I'm really, really starting to take to, but my family enterprise and American winemaking in general, you got to get out the gate.
But even Italians have figured out, even people who make the Barolos have figured out a way that they want to sell the wine. They don't want to hold the wine for 10 years before you would drink it.
Right.
That's why they're aging a lot of them in French oak barrel nowadays to make them more palatable early on for people to be able to drink the wines, the Barolos and Nebbiolos in 2-3 years, as opposed to waiting for 10 years.
10 years.
That's why nobody was buying it before.
Right. But the concept itself, right, is we understand that grape does well. Now we're trying to manipulate it and change it up, but in that original formula, it does well. Like there's nothing worse than a 2-year-old Barolo. Like it just rips your face off.
Absolutely.
And it's from a producer that's very
reputable.
Give it 5-7 years and it's gonna be great.
Different. So. Are there particular geographic regions that you gravitate towards? I'm not talking about your wines or people you associate with. Outside of that, because for me, as someone who is in the wine business, it's very important for me not only to taste the wines I have, but to taste other people's wines from other regions, other countries, to see how things are. And I have my favorites. Are there particular regions that you gravitate towards that you really, like if you're sitting with friends one night and your wines are not there, we would be, okay, let's open a bottle of that or a
100%.
bottle of, what are some of the regions or areas you'd like to enjoy?
100%. So I'll give I'm a complicated guy, so the answer is never simple. There's a new kind of format of red wines that are kind of also coming up. Keep an eye out. They're ancient wines, always been around, but now they're coming back. It's just like a category called chillable reds.
Right.
So, chillable reds, and those are So I make a chillable red, which Barbera will be the carbonic will be a chillable red,
Right.
but also like a senso is something that I've crafted well and I love. But these are like lighter reds, so I'll tell you which ones. Blaufränkisch is it? So this is Austrian, Hungarian.
It's similar to Pinot, isn't it?
It's Pinot-ish, yeah. So it's Pinot derivative. Senso, Blaufränkisch. I'm curious about Austria. I am very, very apologetic to my last name. I want to discover more Hungarian wines.
There are actually.
Great wines. They're fun wines, especially their reds are also on that chillable light
Correct.
side. Greece, I discovered I know Greece, sorry to all my Greek friends. I knew Greece for a long time, even as a wine country. But I started discovering it in the pandemic. We're all sitting there drinking, doing stuff at home. It's Agorgitico. The St. George, I think, is the way I think. So, and it's on that pattern. So I'm gravitating towards that. But as a region, you'll be. My fiance gave me a very good lesson on indigenous. So their portfolio is weird. Not weird. It's amazing. It's indigenous Palestinian Lebanese grapes. So not, like Musar or Kefraya that does Senso, which is a great grape. I love it, right? But they do indigenous grapes, and they are those lighter chillable reds. Again,
Interesting.
likely similar to Areni as well. So Areni, we always say it's like a Pinot. I think it's more like
Sangiovese.
yeah, in that area, right? But a region that I think my palate starts to gravitate. So Austria is something I'm curious. Greece is something I want to explore more. In 2 months, I'm going to Sicily, which that's a country of its own, right? Let's
Yes.
call that. I'm drinking these things. Portugal was a big deal for me a while back. France is a mecca always, but Austria currently, Greece as well right now. I'll be honest with you, and this is something that is a pleasant surprise to both of us. I like white wines from Armenia. I think Voskehat, from that volcanic structure of Armenian soil, I start seeing the terroir in Armenian wines. It's terroir.
How about Khatun Kharji?
That is a great grape as well.
It tends to be more higher in acid,
True, absolutely.
more food friendly.
And if you notice, a lot of producers in Armenia are starting, and not just starting, I'm noticing, right? Because I'm learning about Armenian winemaking. They do a lot of blends as well.
Correct.
So what I'm trying to say is I'm still a novice in the Armenian wine making and wine world, but I'm learning fast. I like what the grapes are and their typicity to the terroir there, which is something we can't replicate as an importer, right?
Right.
We can just do it. So I like Armenian wines if they're done well. So, and I think I'm gravitated towards the Armenian terroir. Has nothing to do towards my patriotism and being Armenian.
But the fact if you were not Armenian, you wouldn't be involved. You wouldn't know as much.
Right. But that's on us, right? That's on us
Right.
to make it happen. I was listening to a podcast where two Armenians were talking, not involved in the Armenian world. From one is Paul Kay, and one was the director at Wally's, and they were talking about Armenian wines and what is the kind of the hurdle to bringing it to market and how it is.
I'm very familiar with that.
Yeah, you would, right?
Yes.
Hats off to you. You are definitely the one of the components that's bridging the gap. Back to the restaurant in Sacramento. Had I not known you, Steban, that's one thing that I want to give my Armenian counterparts that distribution is getting better. It's
Right.
getting better. Thanks to your entity and others that are, and I see Armenian wines in other books now too, right? But that is the major component that Armenians need to kind of grasp, myself included. We'll see more and more. But when you ask what is the region I'm curious about, I want to drink more good wine from Armenia. I want to drink more good.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. It takes a lot of effort.
Yeah.
You know it. You're doing it, and we appreciate all that. And it's a slow process. It's you cannot expedite Mother Nature. You cannot rush Mother Nature. Every year is a different vintage. You have to adapt to it. You have to make the best possible wine from what you get, especially if you're making state fruit from state fruit. So, and I appreciate your evolution in winemaking and developing and being a vineyard owner and carrying on your passion with your family. And I'm so glad you were able to make it here today. Share your story with us and share your wine with us. Thank you very much. I wish you continued success. I will come up there one of these days.
Please do.
And take a look at your vineyards and try some more of your wines. And thank you once again. And remember, always drink the good stuff.
Always drink the good
Cheers,
stuff.
everybody.